Well, I've turned everything on live, so you should be able to start seeing me. And I love that I see you in the chat box already. So some of you, are saying you can't hear anything. So we're going to take care of that. That's why I turned things on. Oh, yay. Yeah, I can hear. Yay. So we're going to give everybody a few minutes to kind of join in. If you are here for the first time, seeing me or don't know who I am, welcome. I know I can tell by your names that some of you I already know, which is cool. And so I'm going to just kind of hold on, wait for people to kind of join in. And I love that like I said, I love that you're using the chat box. If you, during the program, have a question, and it's kind of like a generic question, or it doesn't matter, any question at all, put it in that chat box. If it's something that I'm like, ooh, it might be a little personal, or you don't want to share with the group, you can just send it privately and we'll answer later, or I'll answer later. Or if it's something like, oh, I bet other people might really be interested in this question, or it doesn't matter because I want to know right now, just put that in there and I'll answer it to everybody. I am way more comfortable in a group setting with lots of people. So being in my office all by myself, talking at my computer, is really not my jam. So we're going to just make the best of it and get you some info that you want. So we have quite a few more people probably joining, or probably at about half at this point. So hold on tight and we'll get started in probably a couple more minutes. Again, if I'm squinting, it's because I'm too vain to wear my glasses. So I have my one contact in to see close up, and sometimes it doesn't help me see close up enough. So if I squint, that's what's going on. It's all about vanity sometimes, so it is. I'm sure you get that. Maybe not all of you, but some of you. Also, I'm going to be taking little sips of water, so that's what's in my little cup. If you follow me on Instagram, my cup's always in my posts anyway, so that's what this is. Nothing more fun than that at this point, anyway. All right, couple more minutes, or no, maybe not even a full few minutes. We'll wait just to see who else is going to jump on board, and we'll get started. We have just maybe a couple minutes. Again, see, I'm squinting. I promise not to put my face that close to the camera anymore. That was probably pretty scary for you guys. Oh, yay. Everybody's coming in now. All right, make sure, please, 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 if anything comes up and you're like, I don't know what she's saying, or I have a question about that, then please go put it in that chat box. I really, really, really want to answer your questions, because that just makes it a lot more fun. So we've got about half of our people, or a little bit more than that are going to be joining us today. So I'm going to get started because, the early bird gets a worm, and you're here, and let's get going. So I really wanted to address this issue of metabolism. And those of you that are already our patients, or are interested in becoming a patient here and seeing a naturopath, one of our major root tenets is, find and treat the cause. Find and treat the cause of pretty much everything that we treat. It is important to us. Well, one of the biggest things that we are concerned about, and by we I mean maybe you and me and a lot of people, is our weight. As we get older, and even if we're not aging, many of us are worried or concerned about our weight because it's a significant risk factor in many places. When we are overweight, or we have a higher BMI, it sets us up for diabetes, sets us up for illness in general, all kinds of autoimmune diseases, cancers. So a higher BMI is definitely not where we want to be. So how do we get there? Or better yet, how do we get away from that? How do we decrease our weight and get to a healthier weight, a healthier BMI? And so what the root cause of that is metabolism. So today we're going to talk about metabolism, and then in the end, I'll wrap it all up in a little package, and you'll see this is definitely the key to our weight loss. So let's get started. Solving that metabolic issue or solving metabolism is not as much of a mystery as it seems, even though I wrote it out here. But honestly, in looking at a bunch of the research, and I did probably way more research than was necessary for this webinar, but things change all the time. So the average weight gain between the age of 40 and 50, and if you're younger than 40, then yay. But if you're over 40 and over 50, the story gets a little bit bleaker, because the average weight gain is 10 to 15 pounds. That's quite a bit, and it's all in that midsection. So why? And a lot of that why comes from this slowing down the metabolism. We're going to talk today about cortisol, or the adrenal glands. We're going to talk about thyroid, obviously, sex hormones, obviously one of my most favorite subjects, exercise, which is right up there with one of my most favorite subjects, and nutrition. So, and you might find it odd that nutrition's at the very bottom of the barrel when we talk about metabolism, not necessarily when we talk about weight loss. So they do go together, but we'll get there. So the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. In other words, we have to address all these things. Metabolism is all these things. Weight loss is all these things. It's not just one thing. So we'll get there. So let's start. Let's start out with cortisol. If you've been in my office before and I've drawn you a little endocrine triangle, you will know that at the bottom of the base of that triangle is cortisol. The reason is because it's kind of the granddaddy. It's kind of the driving force. Cortisol keeps us alive. It keeps us alive by increasing that blood pressure when we need to, increasing the heart rate. It also keeps us alive by releasing energy when it feels like we need it, and conserving fat when it's feeling threatened. When our body feels threatened, we're going to conserve fat and release other kinds of energy in order to get us to go faster and to move away, like in emergencies, running from a saber-toothed tiger or a bear or things like that we really don't do a lot anymore. Our stressors now are not as acute in nature. Our stressors are getting up in the morning to go to work, get the kids to school, make sure we've got to pay all our bills on time, or the state of things right now. So those are the stressors. That's not an emergency. That's long acting chronic stress. And that over time will lead to this insulin resistance. And you're going to hear me say that term a lot. And what it means is that our body no longer is responding to insulin. So when we eat a carbohydrate or a sugar, which carbohydrates are broken down into sugars, our body won't be able to metabolize it properly. And it ends up getting stored as fat, and or drives our blood sugar levels higher in the system, which causes all kinds of problems, including type 2 diabetes. So that's when we have too much cortisol going all the time. Not enough cortisol, and we are constantly tired. And we have not enough cortisol sometimes because we're in that constant state of stress, and our adrenal glands are just like, I can't do this anymore. And when that happens, the adrenal glands will look up the triangle. So imagine the adrenal glands down here as a base. They'll look up one level to the thyroid and put stress on that, and up another level to the sex hormones and put stress there, and then even higher vitamin D, which isn't part of our real conversation today, but is very important. So the adrenal glands are primarily important for both keeping us healthy, but when they are too high, too much cortisol, too low, too much cortisol, too little cortisol, and we will have problems with our metabolism. So let's address that. If you have too little cortisol, first of all, though, that's when you come in my office or in general are just like, I am exhausted. I'm so tired. I don't know what to do with myself. I am so tired. That's when those adrenal glands have gone, look, I'm out. I can't do it. You guys are, I'm stressed. Yeah, you got too much stress going on in your life, body, and I cannot do it anymore. I can't. And so without the energy that cortisol gives us, we will be too tired. And when you're too tired, you don't want to exercise, right? So inadvertently, that's affecting your ability, your metabolism, because we need to exercise to have metabolism or to increase our metabolism. That's part of the formula. Talk about later. You also don't make good food choices. When you're tired, you come home from work and you're exhausted, are you going to make good food choices? Sometimes I'm going to say no, because it's easy to grab quick food things. It's not easy to put together, although I beg to differ on the stir fry thing because my family's so sick of it because it's the easiest, healthiest, fastest thing to make is stir fry. We can talk about that later, but it still takes a little time. So it takes time to make good food choices. If we're exhausted, we're not going to do it. What if you have too much cortisol? Well, going to have that problem I just mentioned. Insulin resistance. Now the body's not going to optimize. Anytime you eat sugar or carbohydrate or sugars, your body's just not going to utilize them properly, and it's going to start to store fat, and it's going to store fat in the middle. That's where it stores it first. Overall, it'll still affect your endocrine function because it's going to lean too heavy and hard on that thyroid, pulling it down. Lean too heavy and hard on the hormones, pulling down those as well. So what do we do about cortisol? First, we got to measure it. We can measure that either in your blood work or we can measure it in your saliva. We can dive deeper into measuring cortisol if it's necessary because there are certain times of the day when cortisol should be at certain levels. So when you wake up, it should be higher. As the day subsides, it should dip a little bit down. And as the evening goes, it should come up a little bit and then it should dip right down. It should be this nice little curve. If it's not that nice little curve, then we need to fix it. We may need to give you more support in the morning if you have low cortisol in the morning with herbs or nutrients. Some of you take adrenal, which I use a lot here in my practice. Others take other sport types of herbs or support. Rhodiola is a stimulating herb, works really well if you need a little pump in the morning. If you have too much cortisol, we have to calm things down. And we will give you things that are more like adaptogens or calming, things like ashwagandha, or calming herbs like lemon balm, or those herbs that we give to you at nighttime to calm those adrenal glands out and support your nighttime. But what I mean by supporting nighttime is maybe sleep, which we are going to talk about. So sleep being vitally important to your metabolism. So whether it's up or down, we have to support those adrenal glands. In any case, the best way to treat cortisol is to relax, to de-stress, and breathe. So breathing meditation apps that you have on your phone, there's a million of them. Calm's a good one. Got to breathe every day. Stop and take a breath right now because I just did it. It felt amazing. Take a deep breath in. Let it out slowly. What in the heck just happened to your heart rate? Like everything feels great, doesn't it? I mean, those of you that know or have talked to me about it or are on my Instagram now, I teach yoga at least once a week. It's brilliant. We're going to talk a little bit more about that when we come to exercise, but take a deep breath. Thyroid. So please tell me it's my thyroid. That's what everybody always says when they come to my office. Sometimes it is. And yes, you have a sluggish thyroid. Sometimes it isn't. But if it is a thyroid issue, here's what we need to evaluate, how we evaluate it, and what we need to do about it. Your thyroid's a very sensitive but hard worker. Life events will affect it significantly because, again, thyroid's trying to keep you alive. So when you are growing a baby, if you're pregnant at any point, you are definitely going to put stress on that thyroid. So sometimes after pregnancy, we'll see a thyroid that is out of whack. Once you've been under chronic or acute stress for a long time, the thyroid can dip down. Weight changes can affect it. Gain weight, lose weight, the thyroid will be affected. So these are all reasons that your thyroid will become sluggish. The adrenal glands, like I mentioned, put too much stress on the thyroid. Those are all reasons that we can find dysfunction. We have to measure them appropriately. Now, if you've been in our office, we've measured it appropriately. We look at TSH, which is in the brain. We look at T4, which the thyroid puts out in its raw form. And then we look at T3, which is vitally important. Too many people come into my office that have said, oh yeah, we looked at my thyroid and it's normal. That's because we didn't look at the right stuff. So we need to look at those right measurements. Then we need to evaluate other symptoms. Do you also have some constipation? Do you also have some sleep issues, hair loss, anxiety, depression? These are all signs that your thyroid is a little off. And trust me, if your T4 is not converting into your T3, your metabolism is definitely affected. And so that's why when we measure thyroid, we look at that T3 number, very important. And that conversion will be affected by things like your vitamin D status. And if you all aren't taking a lot of vitamin D right now, then we need to talk. Just trust me, go take vitamin D. Now, not at a high level because we need to measure it before we give you a high level, but at least 5,000 I use a day. It's going to help everything, your immune system, and the conversion of T4 to T3, like iodine will. Like stress getting in the way will affect that. Insulin levels, again, if they're not right, will affect that conversion. It's vital to have a good conversion to T3. That's how we optimize your thyroid. So if you get lab ranges that seem to be level or in this lab, get your labs back and they're in range, that doesn't mean they're optimal at all. It just means they're the same as the last 10 people that went to Sonora Quest and got their labs drawn. That's what ranges are. So when you come or you see a naturopathic physician, a lot of times we will look at that and say, well, that it's in range, but it's not optimal. Optimal needs to be at a certain level. So if we treat the underlying deficiencies, like I mentioned before, if you have a vitamin D deficiency, you are definitely going to experience some sort of thyroid issues down the line because vitamin D is vital for the conversion of T4 to T3. Cortisol being up or down, iodine being off, blood sugar rate, all those things, again, like I said, are going to affect the conversion of T4 to T3. You may need some treatment with either desiccated thyroid or some other thyroid supplementation. And then if you've got some thyroid issues, gluten is not your friend. So I know it gets a bad rap, and gluten kind of deserves a bad rap, but it's very inflammatory for the body and definitely can affect your thyroid function. So pulling gluten out, and I hate to say it, but that caffeine, oh man, I love it. I love my coffee, but about 200 milligrams, 300 milligrams a day is it. That's one coffee. Beyond that, we get to a point where it's not helping. So too much caffeine will affect your thyroid function. So maybe pull back on the afternoon coffee and maybe just go with that morning coffee. And then here's my hint. It's kind of like the clinical pearl that we call when we're doing training. But my hint for the day, if you exercise in the morning, especially between 6 and 8 in the morning, and you're outside, that sunlight affects the pineal gland, and that will trickle down and affect the thyroid. So kind of a hint, give it a try. If you can get to the outdoors or get to some natural sunlight between 6 and 8 in the morning and exercise in the morning, if you haven't been exercising in the morning, give it a try. It will help your thyroid function. So sex hormones are another favorite of mine, of course. They significantly affect your metabolism. And this is where we see aging being a problem. Not a problem. It's good to age. I'm not going to say it's not a good thing to age. But as we age, our metabolism definitely does get affected, mostly because our hormones are affecting that. Now, there's some different caveats. You'll see that in a moment. But aging is most commonly the dysregulation. The hormones will be dysregulated. We have to look at those and measure those hormones, either in the serum, which I do a lot here, but they can also be evaluated in the saliva or even urine. We always are looking for a balance of those hormones. That's the key, is a balance. So let's look at them separately for a minute. So if you look at testosterone and you look at the data and you look at studies, which is kind of like the nerd part of my world. I love reading studies. So when I look at studies, I see a lot about men and testosterone. Why? Because that's their main deal, right? Women have a lot of estrogen, progesterone in there. Men have a little bit of estrogen, little bit of progesterone, and a lot of testosterone. So they're relying heavily on testosterone. So a lot of that, there's a lot of studies there. So just a couple nods to the men in the group. There's a significant decline in testosterone over the age of 35 in men and women, more so in sedentary and overweight men. So that's been studied. I dare say it's also true for women, but it's because when we have insulin dysregulation, which is happening when we're overweight and we have more adipose tissue or more fat, when we get this when the insulin sensitivity goes down, we get more body fat, more truncal, more obesity. We get higher cholesterol, higher hypertension, and higher heart disease in men because that affects their testosterone. So when we have higher fatty tissue, more fat, and we have lower lipid or lower regulation of your insulin, basically, then that testosterone automatically goes down. And we also see it in men that can no longer have testosterone replacement because they've had some prostate cancer in the past, and the risk is different for them now. And although we can replace testosterone in some men that have had prostate cancer, that's a whole nother conversation. But for the most part, a lot of times men are not replacing their testosterone. And in those men, they had the best, not best, sorry. They had the greatest incident of cardiovascular disease and type 2 diabetes as soon as the testosterone left their body. So this is a pretty big deal. Now for women, current research demonstrates obviously as testosterone leaves, which for women it is also over the age of 35, and it is also greater in women that have a higher body fat index. But we know that testosterone increases motivation, libido, sexual function, and helps build muscle mass. So leading to what I think and I see in practice as a positive outlook, a positive lifestyle. If you don't have motivation, drive, and all that, why would you want to exercise? It's no fun. And so I find in my women, when I'm replacing testosterone, as soon as we get that motivation up and the fatigue gone and the energy going, now we're exercising again. Whoa! And now we're increasing metabolism that way. So it's kind of like what we would call in research, we would call it like an adjunct to the study, or something that happens as a result, but not directly related. We do see some direct relationship, and this is worth saying, in testosterone replacement, especially in the pellet therapy, or what we call with the bioidentical estrogen. When we bring in testosterone with it, we do see breast protection. So while not really talking about that right now, it's definitely worth saying that when we replace testosterone in women with their estrogen replacement, which we're going to talk about in a second, it definitely offers extra protection for breast tissue. Important. Now let's talk about estrogen. So estrogen is, it's kind of what we do all day long. And it can be detrimental high and it can be detrimental low. This estrogen wants to be right in the middle. It really wants to be where it belongs. So we first have to obviously measure your amounts of estrogen. That's important. And getting those right labs is very important. For some women, we'll measure it if you're still menstruating right around day 19 to 21, because that gives us an opportunity to look at progesterone as well, and gives us an opportunity to look at balance. Most of the time, that's when we look at them. We see increasing testosterone in peri-menopause and also in certain situations like PCOS. As soon as we see that increase in peri-menopause, we see changes in insulin resistance. And that's why we get that weight gain. That's pretty much the answer. So if we see an increase in estrogen overall because we have a PCO dysregulation like in polycystic ovarian syndrome, the reason we're seeing it, one, is because we see the insulin resistance, but we also are seeing a decline in progesterone. So we need to have that marriage. We need to have that balance again. So keep in mind that, studies that show increased insulin resistance in high estrogen, that's why we get a metabolic change. In low estrogen, we also see that low estrogen leads to something very simple as eating more and slows down the conversion of the stored energy, which is fat, to usable energy. So it still is in effect an insulin resistance, but when you have low estrogen, we overall see a decrease in metabolic rate. So there's also a change in that metabolic change from sugar to from carbohydrates to sugar to metabolism to use of energy to the use of fat in general. So studies that we see here are overall when we replace estrogen when it's necessary, and now if you're menopausal, now we know it's necessary for many reasons, not just metabolism. There's a lot of other stuff for your cardiovascular, for your bone health, for your brain health, and all that. But once we replace estrogen and progesterone where appropriate, we find an overall decrease in body fat, especially in active women. And this is something important to note too. In practice, I also see a decreased mood and increased anxiety as we have in both high and low estrogen. So while it's not maybe direct effect on weight gain, I can see when we feel better, whether that means we've decreased your estrogen or increased your estrogen, if you feel better and you're in a better mood and life is good, you are going to make better food choices and you're going to exercise. So that's kind of the psych part of my world coming into play. I'm sorry, I don't want to exercise when I feel like crap. I don't want to exercise when I don't feel good and my mood is down. So if we increase those things, it's going to lead indirectly to a higher metabolism. So how do we solve the estrogen problem? Obviously, we identify the levels. If it's too high, balance with progesterone. That's its job. We can add in certain herbs. Some of you, if you're listening, your patients have taken chaste tree berry. If you haven't, it's called chaste tree berry or Vitex. It's an herb that goes in and just balances things out for us. You get decreased conversion from other hormones when you take DIM or calcium deglucarate. Exercise. So it's like the circular argument that is so hard sometimes to deal with. If you've got more fat, you've got dysregulation, and you have more estrogen, and now you feel cruddy, and it's just, it's so hard to get to. But if you exercise and we decrease the body fat, now we can decrease the estrogen. So losing weight leads to decreased estrogen. So it's definitely circular, and that's what I mean by the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. Seed cycling is another thing that helps balance out the estrogen-progesterone ratio. Some of you have tried that, but if you want more on that, we can talk later offline, or you can ask for information. Estrogen, when it's too low, obviously we got to replace it. We can do that in many ways, whether it be it's always going to be bioidentical with us, but there's a lot of different options and creams and pellets and what have you. The increase in flaxseed and pumpkin seed, and maca. Maca is an herb that increases estrogen. So a lot of times in peri-menopause, your estrogen's all over the board. Up, down, up, down. Oh, so hard to deal with. But maca is one of those ways that we have a tendency to be able to balance that out a little bit. So that's our estrogen story. Now, progesterone is also part of the puzzle because it definitely balances out estrogen. It declines significantly in perimenopause in times of stress. So, unfortunately, over the last year and a half, we've had a lot of women come in like, okay, what's going on with my period? It's all over the board. Or I've got breakthrough bleeding and I've never had bleeding because I'm menopausal. Or, all these changes in the cycle. Why is that happening? Well, what's happening is we're too stressed. The cortisol is out of control, or it's not working anymore. So now we're looking to progesterone, which is the number one thing that's going to help with our cortisol. And now it's decreased, so our estrogen's increased. We have weight gain, and we have all kinds of breakthrough bleeding and hideous periods, or all kinds of changes in our cycle. So progesterone definitely gets affected with stress, and it can help balance out our estrogen. In some places, high progesterone will cause a little bit of water weight, but it's not really going to affect overall weight gain, like fat weight gain, body fat weight gain. It's very, very calming and helps with sleep. So we can replace it with either a bioidentical progesterone or seed cycling. And again, remember, progesterone is very calming. Remember, calming from the cortisol slide, and helps with sleep. So we go on to sleep. So many of us have problems sleeping. And if there is a big deal issue with sleep, and not only is it the fact that it makes you grouchy and tired and fatigued, but you better believe it's affecting your metabolism. Because if you're tired, that's a pretty good indicator you have decreased metabolism, right? And if you're not sleeping, you're tired. During sleep, growth hormones released. Our cells rejuvenate. Glucose or sugars are metabolized. There's also a couple other things happening. Inulin and ghrelin, these are two hormones, if you will, that are being released that help with making us either satisfied when we eat or hungry to make us eat more. These are interplaying while we're sleeping. Sleep is vital to your metabolism. We have to sleep. And as we move through peri-menopause and ultimately menopause, as progesterone decreases, it results in a lower quality of sleep. So bringing in progesterone when we are deficient helps with sleep. You look at sleep studies, that 40%, so sleep deprivation resulted in glucose tolerance, or way that we will clear glucose or sugar from the body by 40%. So basically, a week of sleep deprivation can result in a significant alteration in metabolic and endocrine function. A week. So over time, that's going to be a big deal. Also, sympathetic stimulation, which is stress. So we go and we give rats a lot of stress, and then we want them to sleep, and we go, uh-oh, this is not good. These rats are getting really overweight, and they're increasing cortisol. So when we see that increase again from too much stress, it increases inflammation. So a lot of you come in and are like, oh, I just feel so inflamed and bloated and blah, I feel icky. A lot of times it's from that cortisol, and we're not sleeping, and now we have more inflammation. And that's going to help us. We're also going to get sick easier. So sleep is a priority. We need to fix it. How can we get some better sleep? So obviously we're going to balance our hormones, especially estrogen or progesterone, to help with sleep. And here's one of those things I hear from women often that come in that have had hysterectomies. I've been told I don't need progesterone because I don't have a uterus. Well, true. If you look at the algorithms that other physicians might look at, they'll say, well, you can replace estrogen, don't need progesterone because you don't have a uterus. Obviously, and hopefully you're listening to the last 20 minutes of my talk, progesterone makes a difference for other reasons. So yeah, we're going to give you progesterone to help you sleep. And you're going to take care of that cortisol. We need to give you stuff. We need to be taking stuff at nighttime to help with cortisol management. Now, maybe not so much in the morning, but we need to regulate the cortisol. We need to relax overall. We got to get the rest and digest part of your nervous system in gear. So the sympathetic nervous system turns us on. This parasympathetic nervous system dials us down. And if we're not dialed down, we can't sleep. And we also can't digest. So if you've ever noticed that, oh my gosh, I have so much bloating, or all of a sudden my stomach is just not happy anymore, and I don't know why, it's because you're under too much stress. Truly, it's what it is. We've got to calm the system. So one of the biggest supplements I love, and if you've seen me, you know this, I would say 70% of my patients are on magnesium. Most of them are on magnesium, Mag SRT, which, I mean, Jigsaw can kind of give me some kudos if they want to for that, but it's one of my favorites. So I would say if you need to calm down, then the magnesium malate, which is in Jigsaw, helps to calm and relieve the tension. And I have a question about the maca. And let me tell you something. So Fem Essence is maca, and we use it a lot. And if you started, one of our patients, somebody was talking about it, and I'm working to answer her question privately when we're done. But maca, remember, does drive estrogen. So even sometimes we'll try maca, and it'll drive estrogen so much that it'll kind of cause increased estrogen. And sometimes we don't want that either. So we'll answer that private question, but I did want to give you that caveat on maca. So and otherwise, and also remember, I'm throwing some of these supplement things out at you, and just throwing supplements in on your own sometimes isn't ideal, just so you know. You know, it's good to run it by whoever you're seeing naturopathically because they interact and they're strong. So it's not like we can just, oh, she said, try this. Blah, blah, blah. That's why I didn't give you dosing amounts, because I didn't want you to be tempted. So these are just ideas, and you can go talk to your doc about it. But the ideas behind these are, you know, oh, relax, the breathing again. Oh, time to stop. Take a breath. I hope you took one with me because it feels fantastic. Plus, it makes me talk a little slower. So it was time to take a breath. Do you know every time you take a breath and it slows that heart rate down and slows the blood pressure down, it also resets and it resets that cortisol, it'll reset the cortisol, it'll reset everything. Just taking a nice deep breath. Okay. Supplement wise as well, when it comes to sleeping, L-theanine is an amino acid that's very calming, very calming. People love it for anxiety. It also helps with sleep. Melatonin is good for some, not good for others. You may or may not have tried it. Some people, it makes their sleep worse. And a lot of that's based on the fact of whether or not you already have enough melatonin. And that's a whole nother conversation about neurotransmitter testing. But some people that will try to take melatonin for sleep that don't need it will find that it keeps them awake. So not everybody needs it. It's just an option. 5-HTP is also something that has to do with our neurotransmitters. GABA as well. These are all suggestions, CBD, magnesium. So talking with somebody, one of your docs about that is important. Sleep hygiene is also sleep hygiene is important. And I know we talk about it all the time, but if you're drinking a lot of caffeine, if you're eating too much sugar and any other stimulants during the day, you bet your britches it's going to affect your sleep. And even if you're taking caffeine in the morning, it can affect your sleep in the evening if you're super sensitive. So anyway, I'm reading our little comments here. And so sometimes when I get private comments, I read them and that makes me kind of take a minute. But again, looking back on again, in the maca situation, it can definitely create imbalance. So talk to your doc about that one. And then exercise. I did not say for the best for last. Nutrition is the last thing we're going to talk about, but exercise is my baby. I love it. I'm going to tell you not exactly how old I am, but you're going to figure it out in a second when I tell you that I was certified to teach group fitness in 1989 with an organization called American Council on Exercise. I don't even know if they exist anymore, but I group fitness since 1989. So some of you probably weren't even born then, but I love it. It's my thing. I love it. Does nutrition matter? Yes. Does exercise matter? Perhaps. As we age, even slightly a little bit more, maybe it might. Increased bone density, lower risk of heart disease. I don't need to tell you all these things. You all know them. But the research that's out there, especially as we age, frequency and intensity, postmenopausal women who did it just 10 minutes of movement daily, overall had 6 fewer inches around the waistline. 6 fewer inches is a lot around the waistline. So I'm talking, again, daily. And I'm also talking about muscle versus fat in your metabolism. So you can, I once had a patient that called herself scrawn flab. I know that's so, I'm like, don't say that again. But you kind of get the idea. And that is when you're skinny, but you don't have a lot of muscle tone. So even people who look healthy may not have a lot of muscle tone. And that's your 5 or 6 or 10 pounders that come in and say, look, I have patients that come and say, I weighed 125 pounds my whole life. And now I weigh 135 pounds. What is wrong with me? And those are some of us that are like, oh, I've always been this really great, normal 135 or 125 pounds. And now why am I 145? Why did that happen to me? A lot of it is because we don't have as much muscle mass as we used to. Income testosterone, right? That'll help you build muscle tone. But also, you might need to change your exercise routine. You just may need to do it. Even if you've always been a solid cardio girl, pumping out that Peloton bike all the time, it might be time to do that bike 3 times a week, but work in some full body work. I'm talking 5-pound weights, full body kinetic chain is what we call it. A lot of core work. Come to my yoga class. You will be doing planks until you don't want to do them ever again. Why? Because if you've got strong body mass and if you have strong muscles, metabolism is going to go up and it's going to be easier to deal with that normal decline in metabolism as we age. So, and your exercise, if you're doing an exercise program that's too go, if you love Orange Theory, and I'm not banging them because I think that would be fun too, you got to do it twice a week and that's it, or 3 times max. You can't be pushing so hard, because that's going to increase your cortisol. And now it's almost like you're cutting your nose off to spite your face, which is the thing my mom always used to say. And now I say it, but it's true. So we've got to find something else that's going to, we're going to use some sort of exercise that's going to be calming as well. Or if you love that, go do it. Go do it. But when you come home, you're going to have to do a 10 minutes of a stretch and relax. Which brings me to stretching and how important stretching is. Stretching releases enzymes from the muscles, lets them calm down, gets them to rejuvenate and rebuild them back. So if you're having a hard time with your metabolism and you've always been an exerciser, it's time to change your exercise. I promise it is. Take a solid look at it. Make sure there's something daily. And I usually take Sunday off, so I'm taking 6 days a week. Not that I do clean my pool usually on the weekend. So that's my exercise maybe on Sunday, but activity every single day. And it doesn't have to be a ton. Please don't make it overwhelming. But if you've never tried a Pilates class, it might be the time. If you've never tried a yoga class, it might be the time. If you never tried a barre class, it might be the time. If you never tried any of those classes at your gym, but you've always been a bike person, maybe you need to be a bike person and a class, or maybe you do something on your own at home. I don't know what it is, but I'm telling you, it needs to be a full body workout. So look at just changing it up. And if you're a person that's like, I walk every day 4 miles a day, and I'll be like, good for you. That is so good. But maybe you need to pull out one of those days or 2 of those days and add some weight training. So it's all good, but everything in moderation, and bring in some weights. So last but not least, oh, my cursor got off. I'm going to bring my face really close. Sorry. Go to my next slide. There we go. The get moving, which I already talked about. One notable thing on here is that one study I read said that exercise, or people that exercise on a regular basis, are more motivated to seek hormone replacement. So that messed up some of the research I was looking at. I thought that was kind of funny. But that kind of feeds into my thought process of, when you're exercising, it leads you to better food choices and perhaps better just overall health choices, which would be seeking out hormone balancing. And also keep in mind, if we're burning 100 calories less or so a day as we age, we need to find a way to do something about that. Either eat less or burn more. It's math, which I don't like, but it's true. Nutrition is kind of the saving the best for last. And I always get this, I'm eating the same thing I ever ate. I always ate, and now I'm gaining weight. But overall, with the changing hormones, our nutritional needs do change. Overall, we do need less sugar. Nobody needs sugar, but we can't tolerate it as much as we used to, which is unfortunate, but true. And we need to consider some sensitivities. Over time, our body does build sensitivities to the foods that we've eaten. And that happens because we end up with some leaky gut issues. Perhaps we were on a strong round of antibiotics, or maybe we made some bad food choices along the way. And now we've got some gut dysbiosis because we've got some leaky gut happening. And we need to correct that. When everything we eat is going to leak in a little, and perhaps we're going to build some immune system reactions to that and some inflammation. So we need to adjust that. Sometimes we do need to do some food allergy testing, because that inflammation is not good for us. We don't feel well that way. And that increased inflammation sometimes over time can lead us to, because our carbohydrates aren't being metabolized properly, we do see some overgrowth of yeast and fungus in the gut. So a lot of times patients that come in will run some antifungals through the system, and they'll be like, oh my gosh, I just lost 10 pounds. That's inflammation. It's not necessarily body fat, it's inflammation. So that's always something to consider as we age, is maybe we have some overgrowth of yeast and we need to address that. And do keep in mind that you might need about 10% less of the calories, which I already mentioned. But skipping meals, never a good plan unless you're doing some intermittent fasting. And we'll get to that in a minute. But just randomly skipping meals all over the place, or eating a bunch at one time and not a bunch at a little time, never a good. Our body needs a consistent flow during our non-fasting time, we'll get that in a second, of healthy foods. Now, intermittent fasting is definitely something that I do advocate for a lot of patients, and that is going 14 to 16 hours without food. The reason that works is because it gives our body a chance to burn the fat that it has on board, to look into the sugars that it has on board. And I'll put this little caveat in there, it's not on the slides, but sometimes when we exercise during the fast, so if we are choosing to fast between 7 p.m. at night and 11 or 12 the next day, and we get our exercise in the morning, a lot of times that'll move our body to burn the fat and fat storages that we have on board. So I do find that people will notice a little bit more body changes and fat loss if we bring that exercise in during the fasting time. Now you could, if you're an evening exerciser, maybe move your regimen of intermittent fasting up a little bit and experiment with fasting, earlier, like from 5 at night, 5 in the evening to 9 or something, and then you do your exercise in the evening. But there is a little bit more research that says that morning exercise is better for you. And I'm sorry if you're not a morning person, but that's kind of how it is. So, yay, thanks, Heather. She just shared with the group. She does the 16-hour fast and exercises between the 12 and 16-hour mark. And I'm telling you, if you haven't tried that yet and you take away something from this webinar, you might want to give that a little bit of a try. I personally do that as well. So that's my personal exercise time, and that is exactly with what Heather says is exactly what I do when I exercise in that time slot. So doesn't mean it's right for you, but it's definitely a try. So the last thing on the nutrition slide is restore, renew, and reestablish. So if I were smart, I would do this online and I would sell some products and I'd be making gazillions of dollars, but I'm not doing that. I'm here with you instead. So I'm going to tell you, this is what I like: restore, renew, and reestablish. And what that means is restore is identify what's going on in your gut and eliminate the things that are irritating it. So stop the overgrowth. Whether it be too much bacteria or too much yeast, we got to get rid of it. We need to renew it by using a really good probiotic, and it's not the same for everybody. So you need to talk to your doc about that. Good probiotics. I mean, yeah, do they have to refrigerate it? Most of them, but some don't. So it just, and some people need a lot of bugs in there, 50 to 100 billion. Others are good with just 5 or 10 billion. It just depends on your gut. So get a good, solid probiotic in there to renew and reestablish. So add in enzymes. If you're not using any enzymes, if your food sits in your gut for too long before it's being metabolized and out, and you're having problems with constipation, you're having a backup, we need some enzymes. We got to get the food moving. We need to absorb your nutrition. You need to absorb the nutrition and then eliminate when it's necessary. And I'm talking bowel movements need to be daily at least. 1 to 2 at least a day. And they shouldn't be difficult either. So those daily bowel movements are important for weight loss. And that's where those enzymes and the probiotics and that gut health, restore, renew, reestablish comes into play. So next and finally, if you increase your metabolism, you'll lose weight if you need to lose weight. You'll maintain a healthy weight if you need to maintain weight. So balance your hormones. Look at the cortisol levels, sleep, full body exercise 6 days a week. I do love the intermittent fasting and most of the time advocate a Mediterranean style diet. What's not on here is a fast. We do I use what's called prolonged fast here. And I love it because it gives you 5 days of a focused fast. You are eating, but it tricks your body into thinking you're not. So you're not actually not eating. You're eating lower calorie, of course, but you're still eating an amount of protein and fat and carbohydrates that are just below the level where your body is identifying that you're eating anything. It was originally designed to reestablish cell health in people that have gone through treatments for cancer primarily. So I love it for anti-aging, gobbling up and spitting out all those bad cells. And I also love it to reestablish your metabolism. So it's generally recommended to do it once a month for 3 months in a row. Depends on you. Everybody's different. I did it once a month for 2 months in a row last year, and then I did it once a month this year. I feel like it's a good restart. Most people lose about 4 to 5 to 7 pounds, depending if you're male or female. But it's just more of a jump start to get you going and making good choices again and get your metabolism revved up. So that's a prolonged fast. And we have a special on that. I'll show you in just a second. But do the restore, renew, and reestablish. I think Prolon would go along with that too, fasting. And then, oh yeah, drink plenty of water. Lots of water. You can't get rid of anything in your system without water. You can't. If your body's dehydrated, it'll hold on to anything and everything it can, including fat, to hydrate itself. So, cheers. You need to drink plenty of water. Otherwise, none of this is going to work. Really not. We have to be hydrated. So, any other questions that you have in the chat, put them in because we have time to answer those. I'm going to put up our little special slide. So that fast I just mentioned about is 20% off, which is everything you need for 5 days. That's a really good picture of it. Everything you need for 5 days. Like it's, you know, everything you need. It's like I do it Monday through Friday, but if you get the package, you can do it whenever you want. And it's soups, olives, kale crackers. I really don't mind it at all. I get a little grumpy like day 3, but then I get over it. And so I think it's a great one. You might want to give some information on that one. And somebody asked about the yoga class. So I've been teaching yoga forever, but right now I'm teaching in a little studio by my house, and it's called Salue Yoga, S-A-L-U-E. McClintock. Oh my gosh, that was such a throwback. Used to live in McClintock. Anyway, it's Williamsfield and Lindsay, so it's out in the Gilbert area. You can look up their whole schedule, but I'm there Wednesdays at 6 in the morning. Remember, I told you I'm an early morning exerciser. But you can go on their website. I think I can put in a send to everybody. So it's just S-A-L-U-E yoga. And if you Google it, it's going to be in there. You'll find it online. And there's lots of classes. So it's a great place. That's where I teach. But of course, I love it. And if you have any other like private questions or you want me to answer some other things, I will do that as well. Send those in and we'll get back in touch with you. The other big thing, most of you know that you got to get things tested. So if you don't already come to one of the docs here, the other special we have is $50 off a new visit. With me, I'd be happy to see you. And sometimes you might have to wait a couple of weeks, but I did open a few new patient visits that are available for you now if you are a new patient, or if you have a friend or someone you love can come in and have a visit with me. That would be fine. So give us a ring and we will honor that $50 off and get you in as soon as we can. And so let's see, anything else? Okay, so that's about it. That's all I have for you guys today. Thank you so much for joining. Remember, we have these webinars on Wednesdays, once a month or so. So we'll make sure we'll let you know on all those. If you have any more questions or you think of something later, just send us a quick email and I will get that answered to you. And I will click on, and if we have anything else, get back to you. Thanks a lot, you guys. We'll see ya.